morning, lovelies! So today I'm going to talk about my chronic pain story, which I figured would probably be a very good second video, just so people kind of understand why I'm creating this channel in the first place. I did say that I do suffer from chronic pain in the first video, however, I didn't really go into it or explain what it was about, so I figured I should do that before I go on and talk about other things. I was diagnosed with abdominal migraines, gallstones, and chronic nausea. I should probably start with the abdominal migraines first, just because they're a little bit harder to conceptualize and understand. Usually when people hear the word migraine, they think of a really bad headache. So this is actually a completely different thing. Abdominal migraines are a subtype of migraine that usually only affect children, and children normally grow out of it. But I have the less common type that affects teenagers and adults, and we don't really know if I'm going to grow out of it. There's not a lot of research that's been put into it. A lot of doctors haven't really been talking about it or have diagnosed it yet. Some don't even know about it. That's why it took me so long to get a diagnosis, because I'm from a small town. I would say I get an abdominal migraine probably once every 2 to 3 weeks, which might not sound that bad. But when I do get them, abdominal migraines can be really debilitating, and they can last more than 24 hours, which means I wake up the next day and I'm still feeling the effects of the migraine, which can be really exhausting and really difficult to deal with sometimes. So pain-wise, when you hear the word migraine, you think bad headache. However, I have no headaches associated with my abdominal migraines. I've actually never had a migraine headache before, so I don't really know what it feels like. More often than not, they're higher on the pain scale and they're a little bit harder for me to work through. When they're really, really bad, kind of the only thing that helps is just laying down in a fetal position with a heat pack. Advil doesn't really do anything. So now I'm going to start at the very beginning, which is probably the best way to go about it, because that way I can kind of lay out the timeline for you and kind of help people understand why this took so long, and it kind of explains all the other stuff that I'm dealing with also that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So I've been dealing with stomach problems since I was really little. In elementary school, I would often go to the nurse and get sent home because I just had really bad stomach aches all the time. So my mom eventually took me to the doctors to kind of figure out what was going on. And it turns out I just have an overly acidic stomach. The doctor said it was from worrying and that I had developed some stomach ulcers. So they gave me some medication to help lower the acid levels of my stomach. That did actually help for a little while. I was feeling better, and then a couple weeks later, maybe like a month later, it stopped working and I started getting the stomach aches again. So a cycle kind of started to develop where I would start to feel really sick and really awful. And we'd go to the doctors and they'd say there's nothing wrong with you. And then I'd go back to school, I'd feel a little bit better, and then a few weeks would go by and it would happen again and I would feel really sick, and I'd go back to the doctor and they'd again say, we can't find anything wrong with you, we're sorry. So we thought maybe I was allergic to stuff, so we got a referral to see an allergist, and they did a bunch of allergy testing for me and it all came back negative. I wasn't allergic to anything. We also tried going gluten-free. That really didn't do anything. We also tried going dairy-free. We thought maybe I was lactose intolerant. I wasn't.
I'm still a big fan of cheese to this day.
Nothing was working, and the doctors couldn't find anything that was physically wrong with me. Eventually, my doctors kind of came to the conclusion that it was all kind of worked up to anxiety. So they sent me to see a therapist, and I started taking anxiety medication. I did actually feel a little bit better once starting medication, because we know now that a lot of my nausea comes from my anxiety. So when I get anxious, I get nauseous, which means I'm nauseous
Quite a lot.
I was still getting some stomach aches, but they weren't as bad, and I wasn't missing school anymore. I was still going to school. I was able to kind of do things that everybody else could do with the minor occasion of a stomach ache. So we just thought, okay, hey, we solved it. It's all anxiety. I was actually able to attend an overnight camp called Sick Fine Arts Camp. This summer camp for kids who are really into the arts. I made a lot of friends at that camp, and I was really enjoying my life and not feeling so sick all the time. When I got back from Sitka the second time, we decided, hey, you're fine, you don't need your medication anymore. So
I went off of my medication.
And lo and behold, all of my symptoms, my stomach aches came rushing back. Fast forward to my freshman year, I was getting a lot more stomach aches and my grades weren't very good. I was having a hard time kind of adjusting from count how many times I say school in the next sentence. Middle school to high school, because I went to a Montessori school, which is not a traditional grade school. I began to feel this really sharp pain in my right side. One night, the pain got so bad that we thought that I might have appendicitis, so we rushed to the ER, and they gave me an ultrasound. And granted, this is the worst pain I've ever felt in my entire life. Like, it was so bad. I couldn't move. I was laying down. I was crying. On the way to the ER, I was just sobbing. Like, it hurt so bad. So the doctor came in, and he sat me down, and he said, "You're fine. You just aren't pooping enough. So here's a laxative." I ended up feeling really discouraged and upset just from that experience, because no one was really believing me or acknowledging that I was in a ton of pain anymore. And the doctors didn't really check me out anymore. They didn't really look into my pain anymore. They just kind of thought, oh, here she is again, she's back. In a last-ditch effort to kind of try and figure out what was going on, we got a referral to go down and see a specialist at Seattle Children's Hospital, which was kind of intimidating for me, just because at that point I believed that it was just all in my head, and it was just really hard because no one was taking me seriously. So the doctor that we saw was so incredibly kind and nice to me, and he had really made it a point to say, there is something wrong, it's not all in your head, and we're going to figure it out. He ended up wanting to run some tests, so I got my blood drawn and we did another ultrasound, and the ultrasound tech was so thorough and so kind to me. And I had told her about my previous experience and how they had only really checked one side and it was really short and brief. And she really made a point to say, we're going to check and check again just to make sure that everything is working the way it should be and that you are all good to go. The next day I got a call, so we came back in and I was told that yes, I do have abdominal migraines, and yes, I do have gallstones. So they kind of explained to me that the overly acidicness, so my overly acidic stomach had been creating extra bile and extra stomach acid that had been being stored in my gallbladder, and that had eventually turned into gallstones because there was just so much extra that I wasn't using. So now, whenever I get these really bad stomach aches, I know they're abdominal migraines, and it's an actual health condition that not very many people suffer with, but a lot of children suffer with, and are just kind of dismissed and not really heard. And so I think it's really important to hear my story, just to know, if you are going through this, you're not alone and you aren't crazy, and this isn't something that, people should be taking you seriously, because it can be really difficult to cope with and it can be really painful, and I understand your pain if this is something that you're struggling with. If anybody's doctor is dismissive about their pain, I understand where you're coming from. I know how it feels to be told that you're crazy over and over again and that you're physically fine when you're not. So get a second opinion if that is happening to you. Like and subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me in the future. I promise the next one will not be as boring as this one was, but I just thought it was important to kind of explain why I'm making this channel and why I hope to be an advocate for people. Thank you for watching and have a great day, lovelies, and remember to be kind.